Hello, thank you for coming today. My name is Dr. Michael Gavetti. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer here at Support Solutions. I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm based in the Memphis office. Today we're going to be doing a training on power struggles and preventing power struggles. I'll do as much as I can to get most of the most important information out, but people often want to know specific stuff about working with their particular individual. If that comes up, no problem. You can call me anytime down at the Memphis office. Just call into the main number, ask for Dr. Gavetti or Dr. G. They'll transfer you straight in, and I can answer whatever questions you need. Okay? So as we talk about power struggles, we're going to start by figuring out what do we mean? What are we saying? What are we calling it? Okay? Because terminology can differ from place to place and person to person. When I'm talking about a power struggle, I'm talking about a time, a situation, where the desire to win the argument is more important than whatever issue is being discussed. Okay? When your desire to be right is more important than your desire to have the thing happen, then you're probably in a power struggle. Okay? It can appear as kind of a big argument over a little thing. You know, here we are, there's a yellow crayon on the ground, pick up the crayon. No, I don't want to pick up the crayon. Hey, you're the one that dropped the crayon. You're supposed to pick up the crayon. I don't feel like picking up the crayon. You can't tell me what to do. I can tell you what to do. I'm the staff, and you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to clean up your own mess. Man, now you're being disrespectful. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just telling you to pick up your mess, pick up your crayon. That's what you're supposed to do. Maybe I don't feel like doing it. Well, why are you making a big... it's a crayon. Typically, a power struggle is exactly that. A small thing where it's a point of debate, but really it's a tiny issue, and it becomes more about both sides sort of wanting to exert control over the other person. How do you know when you're in one? We'll get to that in a minute, but some things to be looking for. If the argument is continuing and you guys are getting more and more entrenched in your positions, there's no negotiation going on, you're just working harder and harder to sort of convince the other person that they're wrong, it's probably a power struggle. If there's no negotiation happening, it's probably a power struggle. If what you find is that everything is an argument, every time either one of you open your mouths, it's an argument, you probably got a power struggle going on in the house. Okay? By definition, a power struggle cannot emerge unless both of the people are willing to participate. It takes two to tango in a very real sense. And a power struggle cannot exist without both parties being willing to be sort of part of the dance to make it kind of happen. There are a lot of situations where a power struggle can develop. The most common reasons have to do with both the person and the staff each trying to sort of exert control. Okay? For the people that we work with, they often feel powerless. And they feel powerless for a lot of good reasons. One of the main reasons being they have less power than the staff in the homes. Staff is allowed to say to the guy no, but he's not allowed to boss the staff around, right? And there are times when we really do say no, okay? Anytime when a person feels powerless or feels like their ability to control things has been challenged, they're going to want to reassert that. And they may pick an issue that doesn't really matter just to sort of prove to themselves that they've got some control. The other thing that can happen really commonly is that sometimes something from outside will challenge their sense of control or make them feel helpless, and they'll bring that back into the home. You'll have a phone call from mom, and mom will say, no, you're not coming home this weekend, I don't want you here, you're acting bad, whatever. And he really wanted to go home, and now mom's saying, no, you can't come home and do this thing you really wanted. Well, he may hang up that phone, and it may have nothing to do with you, it may have nothing to do with what's been going on in the house, but this individual may be coming in sort of looking to not pick a fight, but start an argument over power and control and defiance just because he's feeling really helpless. He's feeling really out of control because this outside thing has happened. And that's a really common trigger for power struggles and sort of larger arguments over control. Any person, any human being has a sense of pride. Any human being has a sense of self-regard, of confidence, a sense of self-value. Okay? And for you and I, we have lots of things in our lives to be proud about. We have the accomplishments of founding and taking care of a family, having a house or apartment that we really feel good about, professional achievements, promotions, advancement, educational stuff, hobbies, participation in church, participation in charities, things that make us feel like we've accomplished something, okay? And that pride in what we've been able to accomplish really does make it possible for us to sort of shrug off small disappointments. Because we get to say, hey, okay, the guy didn't like the way I did the training, but, I know I'm a pretty good psychologist and I've helped a lot of people, and okay, it just happened, all right? If you're a person who has less to be proud about, has fewer accomplishments, and that's true for a lot of the individuals we have, they see a life that they want, but they haven't necessarily been able to build the life that they want. That can be really disappointing. That can be really hard. They can feel very powerless. And especially if they've tried really hard to do something, tried really hard to achieve something, tried really hard to make something happen, and it just didn't work out the way they wanted. Man, that really hits your pride really hard, okay? It really makes you start to go, maybe I really can't do this, maybe I can't measure up, maybe I'm not good enough. And when that happens, when that sense of self-regard is challenged, the need to defend that, the need to feel useful and powerful goes way, way up, okay? And I'm sure you guys know, many of our individuals are really sort of hypersensitive around the idea of respect. The idea of being treated respectfully and spoken to respectfully and all that kind of thing. And it sort of comes out of this. It's the idea that, I ain't no punk. And they don't want to be seen that way, and they're not going to shrug off the perception that you see them that way. And they'll fight to make sure you understand they're not going to get pushed around. And I don't mean they'll argue. They'll fight to make sure that doesn't happen. So many times when I see power struggles, what I'm seeing is a person who's had their self-regard or their pride challenged in some way. And they really need to reassert it. They really need to reassert that, man, you can't push me around, man. I'm not I'm not punk, I'm not weak, I'm not whatever. You can't tell me what to do. And they'll pick something that really doesn't matter just so they can have the fight over it. Okay? Power struggles can be used to intimidate staff or assert a general sense of power. And you find these a lot of the time, especially if the person's been sort of tempted or pushed or encouraged by some outside force, a disruptive family member, a boyfriend or girlfriend that's not really all that positive an influence on their life. If there's somebody outside the home going, they can't tell you what to do. If there's somebody outside the home going, man, you're not the boss, you get to do what you want, you will often see testing behavior that comes across as a power struggle. I'm not doing that, and you can't tell me what to do. Right? Yeah? No, you can't, right? Yeah, right. You can't tell me what to do. You'll see that kind of testing behavior pretty commonly, especially if there's some sort of outside influence or support sort of edging it on. Okay? It's a test, really, to see what the staff is going to do when they start to challenge, hey, man, I really do need you to pick up your socks before we go out for today. Power struggles are also used as a way to get hidden benefits or to solve undercover problems. Okay? And when psychologists talk about this, we talk about this in the sense of secondary gain. Okay? What is the reason underneath the reason? They may be coming out and going, my staff is mean, I hate my staff, I want all my staff fired. Or they may be like, man, he's mean, he always tells me what to do. Or they may be coming out going, my staff never talked about good stuff, they always, there's all these complaints. And that may be the issue, that may be the problem, that may be the thing that we're really working on. But it's also true that it could just be something underneath it. You see this really commonly in some of our high-need, high-behavior homes. The issue is sort of attention. In those homes where the person is just a real handful, once things go quiet, staff is just like, oh, thank goodness, I really just want things to be quiet for a while. And they sort of withdraw. Well, this person can get kind of lonely. And they may want to interact, but they may not know how to interact. And so you can see some really flawed stuff around trying to interact, trying to have a conversation, trying to have a social relationship with somebody, but just not really knowing how to get started. It may be that they just can't tolerate the quiet. That once things get really soft and really quiet and really hard, that they just don't know what to do. Okay? So, as you're looking at the power struggle, sometimes they really are arguing over the French fry on the floor and, like, who's going to pick that up. But other times it's a completely different issue. And if you can understand the issue, we'll get onto this later, you can usually figure out a way to avoid the power struggle. Okay. Some of these guys have problems with defiance. Okay. And anybody who's got a defiance issue is at a really high risk for a power struggle. You see this a lot of times with some of the younger people that we work with, 18, 19, 20, that kind of thing, that sort of post-adolescent group. And remember the diagnosis. The diagnosis is developmental delay. It means that they're going through all the stuff that you and I went through just on a different timeline. It's taken a little longer, okay? And all that kind of teenage, get out of my room stuff that you and I all did, like they may be still sort of working on that a little bit. They may still be resolving it. And so you can see an awful lot of sort of power struggles and defiance that sort of surround that as a part of their sort of developing towards a more mature, more adult way, just because they're sort of still in that post-adolescent place. Some of the people that we serve have some very specific mental health problems. And here I'm talking specifically about like personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic, antisocial personality disorder, stuff like that. They also engage in power struggles. They do it for sort of more complex reasons. And so if what you've got is an individual who's got that diagnosis or you think might have that diagnosis or you've heard that whispered around the corners and you're not really sure, get with your supervisor, your BA, with somebody really quick because we have some specialized trainings around working with those individuals. Much of what's here is going to be useful to you, but there's more that you need to know about that. Okay? So just make sure you double check on all those things. So we've talked a little bit about when they're likely to develop, when power struggles are likely to develop, the circumstances and the setting up events that tend to make them more common or more likely to occur. So the next question that you're going to need to be asking yourself is like, how do I know I'm in a power struggle? How do I know I'm there? And the simple answer is you probably won't at first. It's sort of the nature of power struggles that they kind of creep up on you. That you're sort of in them before you know you're in them. Okay? It may not be until sort of much later in the process that you sort of realize you're kind of arguing over nothing. So, whenever you're in a debate, whenever you're in a discussion, whenever you're in any kind of place where you're in a contradictory position to the individual you're serving, there's some kind of questions you're going to want to start to ask yourself. A double check, a way to be sure, hey, am I in a power struggle or no, I'm not. Start with, what are we arguing about? Okay? If your answer is a specific thing with justification sort of past the moment, then it's less likely to be a power struggle. So, for example, if you're saying, look, the guy wants to buy and drink an entire 2-liter bottle of regular Coke and he's on a diabetic diet. If that's your point of debate, then that's probably not a power struggle, okay? You've got a diabetic diet that the person's supposed to follow. You understand his health and safety could be at risk if his sugar goes all wacky. Like, okay, we've got a reason to be having a discussion here. He wants it, and I'm really concerned that it might not be safe, all right? On the other hand, if the debate, if the argument, the point of contention, whatever, is more general, if it's more vague, I'm not going to jump around just because he says so. I'm staff. I'm not a servant. Not always got that attitude for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a nice guy, but now, well, you got that attitude? No, I ain't jumping for you. Hey, a rule is a rule, right? That's it. If a rule is a rule, the rule is a rule. We're going to fight over the rule. That's what we're going to do. Or, you need to know more about sort of who's in charge out here. Like, if you're doing that kind of stuff, if you're doing the whole, it's the principle of the thing, like, whenever somebody tells me it's the principle of the thing, I know it's never the principle of the thing. It's something else. They're mad. They want control. They want money. They want, like that's what it is. If you're having to trot out the whole lame, it's the principle of the thing, it is definitely not the principle. There's something else. There's some other investment. Check yourself. If you're more interested in getting your point across than you are with kind of getting them to do what they want, if you're sort of more interested in making them understand why they got it wrong than in actually just doing it, you're probably in a power struggle. Okay? Like I said, if you say no to the guy on the principle of the thing, or because he needs to learn that rules are rules, or that he needs to listen to the staff, you're dead set. That's a power struggle. I've never heard anybody with that come out of their mouth that wasn't hooked into a power struggle. If the answer is no, and you've explained it once, and you're continuing to argue, you're probably in a power struggle by now. It may not have started out that way. It may have started out as they said, hey, I want to travel to Mars, and you go, man, we just can't make that happen. And they go, why not? And you go, like, well, because we don't have any spaceships. And they go, well, but I really want to go to Mars. And you're like, man, that's silly. You can't go to Mars. But I really want to go to Mars, and you're not listening to me. And like, hey, I do listen to you all the time. Like, if the argument continues beyond your saying no and saying why, you're probably in a power struggle by now. Didn't start there, but that's where you are at this moment. Okay? One thing to be very watchful of, this will work great and help you a lot. Power struggles usually include the expectation that the person will comply immediately. Power struggles usually have a sense of urgency to them. You're going to do it, and you're going to do it now. Yes, I will. No, you won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. Yes, like there's a lot of push. There's a lot of push, and it's got to be now, right now. And as soon as you feel that push, it's got to happen. It's got to happen now. Pick up the socks. They're right there. They're on the floor. Pick up the socks. As soon as you've got that urgency, I guarantee it's a power struggle. Okay? I mean, if it's get out of the highway, that's different, and we all know that's different. But 9 times out of 10, it's not get out of the highway. 9 times out of 10, it's like the socks are right there. And then once you're in that place, almost assuredly, you're in a power struggle. How do you know you're in a power struggle? You know you're in a power struggle because there's a sense of urgency, because you've got a vague reason for why you're trying to impose things, when the argument has continued beyond the need to impart information. You've said no, you've explained why, but the argument continues. Or if it seems to be more about principles and rules and teaching him who's boss, or having the person understand your role as staff. Like, once the argument has evolved beyond whatever thing we're talking about, most likely you've gotten yourself into a power struggle. Previously, we talked about how do you know if you're in a power struggle, what does one look like? Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more about managing a power struggle. Okay? What do you do now? Okay? So the first question, the easiest question is, well, how do you handle a power struggle? Okay? And the easiest flippant answer is avoid it. Okay? That's what you typically want to be saying is, how do I do it? Avoid it. And if you've got somebody who engages in a fair number of power struggles, you may begin to get a real sense of the kinds of things that trigger that person, the kinds of things that they want to argue about, the kind of power struggles that they want to engage in. And once you've got a sense of that, there may be times when you can divert, when you can avoid. I've got some more specifics about how to do that coming later. But it's an important thing to note, is that you really do need to know the person well enough to know what are the likely tripwires that they're going to be putting in front of you, because power struggles that you avoid are so much easier than power struggles you manage. Power struggles you manage, there's a lot of cleanup going on. And that's a key point to remember here, one that's sort of fundamental. Once you're in a power struggle, you've made a mistake. And I want to emphasize that you've made a mistake. Okay? The individual is the one receiving the services. The staff are the ones that are providing the services. Okay? There is an expectation. I mean, I've said it takes two to tango, but the fact is, they're receiving the service, you're dispensing the service. It is very much your responsibility to be aware of and avoid a power struggle, or once you see that you're in it, resolve it and clean it up. Okay? You can try to blame the other guy as much as you want. He's manipulative, he's pushing staff, he's defiant, and all of that may be true. But the fact is, he's in services because he's got needs. He's in services because he doesn't do this very well. That's the reason he's here. That's the reason we're taking care of him. Okay? And if we've recognized that he's got needs and he doesn't do this as well as he should, then it's very much our responsibility to monitor and adjust and help him avoid the power struggles by having us detach ourselves from them or avoid them completely. Okay? Now, that being said, everybody gets into power struggles. I'm a licensed psychologist. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I still get hooked sometimes. Not as much as I used to, but it happens. Okay? The nature of the beast with power struggles is that you typically don't notice them until you're all the way in the middle of them. Okay? Think about, don't raise your hands, think about the arguments you've had with family, with your romantic partners, stuff like that. In every one of those arguments, were you right? In every one of those arguments, were you just talking about the thing that mattered, or was it starting to get into being a fight about the fight? Yeah? Has every single argument got you on the side of truth, justice, and the American way? Yeah. Me neither. Okay? We just all get hooked. We just all get pulled in. It's nature of the beast. So, as much as you can, I want you to try and avoid these power struggles. That's by far the easiest way to deal with them. But everybody gets hooked. Once you've been hooked, step one is to go, I've been hooked, and it's my responsibility to get us out. It's not his. It's not the individual's. I need to get us out of this dark place. So, how do I avoid them? How do I manage them? Okay? And what we've got here is 10 ideas, 10 steps, 10 thoughts to have about it. And with your person, these won't all work. With your person, maybe only one or two of these will work. But with luck, most of your power struggles can get handled by at least one of these ideas. So, as we're going through them, please be thinking about your guy and the kinds of power struggles you tend to get into and the sorts of interventions that may be most effective with your particular individual. Okay? I also want to say one other thing, and I'm going to repeat it. It'll come up later, but I want to make sure it gets said for sure. Power struggles most often come out of us either setting a limit, which means telling them no, or making a demand, telling them you have to. Okay? Usually power struggles come out of that. That's control. You can't or you have to. All right? In the lives of the people we serve, there should be a fairly small number of times when we really have to do that. There shouldn't be very many no's in this person's life. Okay? If they want to do something and it's within our power to do, we should do it. Okay? Now, if they've got a behavior plan that says in order for them to do A, they have to do B, you follow the behavior plan. That's what it is. And sometimes we'll be dealing with that. There'll be power struggles over that. If they've got an ISP that says, hey, for this guy, it's always got to be this certain way for this reason, then okay, we're going to have to fight that. But one of the things I found in talking about power struggles with staff is that in many, many, many cases, especially with sort of the defiant, the arguing, the get out of my room kinds of people, staff tend to start getting very narrow. They start arbitrarily saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. They start making adjustments for staff convenience. It's raining, I don't want to go out. No, we're not going out. Okay? I'm not saying anybody here does that, but I'm saying I hear that a lot when I hear power struggle debates. And so one of the things that's really important as we talk about managing power struggles is I want to make sure that it's clear that I only want these skills used in those cases when we've really got an issue that's a point of contention. First and foremost, you can avoid lots of power struggles by letting the guy have what he wants. And unless there's a specific reason not to let the guy have what he wants, that's backed up somewhere, not just it would be a really good idea, be thinking about, do you really want to be engaging in this fight? Okay? I get that he should be eating more fruit. Everybody should be eating more fruit. Are we going to make it a knockdown, drag-out fight? I don't know the answer. If it's in the BSP, if it's in the ISP, if it's true for your guy that it's got to be that way, then okay, we'll do that. But for a lot of these guys, if he goes, hey man, I want an extra orange, or no man, I don't feel like eating the oranges today, let it go and don't let it be a power struggle. Okay? All right, so let's look at 10 ways to manage or avoid power struggles. The first thing, just like that old, don't panic. You got to keep calm, okay? Almost always, power struggles are fueled by emotion, okay? They typically are not cold, calculated, rational exchanges. Typically, what starts out as a reasonable exchange becomes this emotional power struggle as everybody's anger and resentment and sort of mistrust and hostility sort of rises, okay? So the temptation to engage in a power struggle increases dramatically when your own emotions begin to rise. Even if you don't let on to the individual that you're upset, even if you hide your anger, even if you hide your emotion, it gets harder and harder for you to sort of extract yourself from the argument. You get more and more invested in sort of making him understand why he got it wrong kind of thing. So one of the first things to do is check your own internal emotional state. If you're getting frustrated, man, your risk of getting pulled into one of these things goes way up. All right, so let's make that practical for a second. If you see a coworker, you see the other staff who's in the house, who's starting to get a little edgy, okay, step in right away. In some houses, we've got it set up where, like, this staff works with this person and this staff works with this person. Really, the better model for us, whenever we can do it, is to have both staff working with both individuals. But however you guys have worked it out, if that staff is starting to get frustrated with that person, having you sort of step in and let that person pull back for a couple of minutes is hugely useful. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign they're not doing their job, okay? It's a sign that a difficult person has started to frustrate the staff a little bit, and you guys are working as a team. It shows that you guys are doing a really good job being collaborative staff. Hey, I'm going to step in. I'm going to give this guy 3 minutes to get himself cooled off. He can be watching my person while it's going on. And then 3 minutes from now, when he's cooled off and things are okay, we'll swap back and things will be all right again. Okay? You got to support each other. You got to help each other out. It's not a sign that somebody's not doing it. It doesn't mean that you're the one that's got to get stuck working with a difficult person all the time. It's not what I'm talking about. But help each other out. You're out there together doing that. You don't have to do the other guy's job. Just give him a break. Just give him a break. And lots of times that'll diffuse or avoid a situation that already exists. Okay? The second thing that I would put on this list is to keep your end goal in view. What is it that you want? What is the specific thing that we are addressing and adjusting? What is the specific point that we are trying to resolve? Okay? Power struggles usually are times when an argument starts small and gets big and gets vague. Okay? If you can keep yourself focused on the small thing that we're actually discussing, it gets harder to get pulled into a power struggle. Okay? Having a single, well-defined goal in front of you is going to help a lot because it allows you to take everything else and make everything else a lower priority. Okay? Having many goals or priorities really expands the argument, and it makes it hard to make any progress on any one thing because you guys keep jumping topics. The third thing to do is to make sure that whatever you're debating is both specific, meaning you'll know when we've got it, and also necessary. Do we have to do it? Okay? Does the person have to pick up their socks right now? Okay? Or could they pick the socks up eventually? Okay? Could they pick the socks up before we leave? Okay? And if picking up the socks is not an absolute necessity, they made their bed, they put away their clothes, there's a couple of socks on the floor, but mostly the room is okay, do you absolutely have to demand compliance? I mean, if it's a safety issue, okay. If it's specifically in the behavior plan, okay. But that's usually pretty rare. There isn't a lot of that around. So in this case, is this something where, you know what, we can slide this one a little today? They did make their bed. They did make a good faith effort to clean that room up. We're going to call this good enough. Do I want the socks off the floor? In a perfect world, yeah, I would. Do I have to have a fight over it? I don't know. Okay? So make sure that the thing that you're looking at, the thing that you're discussing is both specific, it's the socks, not you're messy, and it's necessary. It has to be done. you're going to find there really aren't very many no you can't situations. They do exist. They are out there. We do have them. But they're not really all that frequent. Okay? It is so helpful to just back off, slow down, provide more space, make everything feel like it's moving through molasses. Think about what you really need to have happen versus what would be good. Because what would be good, what you want, and what you need, there's a space there. There's a lot of wiggle room usually between those spaces. And within that room, you guys can usually find something that will work. Okay. Fourth, once you've got your eyes on the prize, ignore other problem behaviors. Okay? If the person is picking up their socks and they're mumbling under their breath, let the mumbling go. Don't mention it. Don't comment on it. Just let it go. You want them to pick up their socks, they're picking up their socks. If the guy's like, oh, you can't tell me what to do, stupid stuff in there, but he's picking up the socks, don't mess with it. All right? You're getting what you said you wanted. Okay? This intervention is called planned ignoring. Okay? And that's where, as long as you're sort of getting what you want, we're ignoring other problem behaviors that might be co-occurring. Okay? Now, planned ignoring, because people misunderstand this a lot, so I want to make sure it's really clear. What we're doing here, it's not saying that it's okay for the guy to be cursing you out under the breath. Like that's not okay. That's not what I'm saying. But it is sort of an intermediate step. Okay? As long as this guy is doing the good thing, we don't want to knock that off course by intervening on a bad thing. We want to make sure the good thing continues to happen. And planned ignoring means you got to give up those other behaviors to get this one thing to continue. Now, in behavioral terms, what we often find occurs is that once this person is doing more good things, once they're having more good days, they're doing more compliance, more positive stuff, a lot of this other problematic behavior kind of falls away on its own. We don't have to do very much with it. Now, sometimes it continues. And if this guy continues cursing you out, then eventually we'll put that on the behavior plan and address it specifically. But what we find oftentimes is that there's this cluster of problem behaviors. And if you can get them doing more good behaviors in one specific area and not mess with the rest of it, as they do more and more good things, more and more of the bad things just kind of fall away on their own. So when we do planned ignoring, I don't want you to think that I'm saying it's okay for them to curse you out. That's not where I'm at. What I'm saying is this is an intermediary step, a place where we're going from A to B. And as long as you've got your eyes on the prize, they're picking up the socks, hey, it's cool. You're not arguing. They're doing what you want. We're all fine. Fifth, and this is probably one of the most important parts of this whole training, do what you can to save the person's pride. Give them an out. Okay? Don't demand apologies. Don't force the person to admit they were wrong. In fact, it's probably useful to sort of change the subject and move on, even if they want to continue talking about it a little bit. Okay? If you can pretend that it didn't occur and get through your day, do you want to pretend that the argument didn't happen? Let's just leave it behind, okay? It's okay to help the person find reasons or excuses to explain the disagreement as long as you're not violating the rule, okay? So you don't want to be saying, yeah, it's totally okay that you beat up the other staff. He made you mad. You don't have to do that. But you can go, man, you've had a frustrating day. I totally get it. I totally get you've had a really frustrating day. It's been really hard for you today. Makes perfect sense to me. Sometimes I make mistakes when I get mad too. It happens. It's every human being is like that. Cool. We don't need to talk about it anymore. We're gonna chalk this up to a bad day. We're gonna move on. Okay. It's really nice to be able to blame something else. Oh, I get it. You didn't understand that all this was in the behavior plan. You didn't get that this is like a really firm rule now. Well, we just changed the behavior plan a week ago. It makes sense to me. We just made this change. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you lost. Totally okay. No, now it makes perfect sense to me. This was just you didn't understand the plan. Okay, I get it. Totally fine. And then they'll be like, yeah, I didn't understand the plan. That was why I was saying. And you're like, okay, yeah, cool. That makes sense. let them save their pride. Help them out with that. Okay? Give them an excuse to do what you want. If you get on the whole, man, you knew what was on this plan and you still argued with me, then they got to fight you again. Okay? Give them an out so they don't have to keep arguing. Sixth, try to create situations where you are not the immediate source of the disagreement. Okay? If there's somebody outside the home that can be the source of the problem, you really want to make that happen. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about throwing people under the bus. This is a thing you guys should decide in advance. But one of the things that I can really help staff with when they come to me, because I have a psychotherapy caseload, I see people for counseling. One of the things that's really useful is that if there's a rule in the house that the person doesn't like, we've got a sex offender and we really don't want him to have access to pornography, stuff like that, and I'll go, listen, when he gets mad about this, blame me. When he gets mad about this, when he says, you know, I really want that, you can go, listen, man, I wish I could give it to you, but Dr. Gavetti said no. Dr. Gavetti said you can't have this, it's not safe. Oh, I can handle this just fine. It would be totally like, man, okay, that's cool. You know, I'm just the staff here. I got to carry out the rules. If I give this to you, they'll fire me and they'll get a guy on here who's an even bigger hard case than me. Okay? So, man, I hear you. I wish I could help you. You take it up with Dr. Gavetti, man. I feel bad about it. Okay? As long as everybody knows you're doing it, blaming someone outside the house really helps to avoid a power struggle because they don't really have a justification to argue with you. You're agreeing with them. Or at least going along with, man, you know, whatever. That's the rule. I wish I could violate it. I can't. They'll fire me if I do. Like, you don't necessarily have to go, that's a stupid rule. I don't believe it. You know, however you want to handle it's all right. But if they can be mad at somebody who isn't standing right in front of them, it's a lot harder to do the power struggle. It's a lot harder to get into it because they really don't have a way to be mad at you because it's not you who's doing it. It's Dr. Gavetti or the behavior plan or the ISC or whatever. Okay? State regulations, the investigator, support solutions policy, whatever the thing that you're blaming, as long as it's exterior to the home, you've got a source for them to be upset at that isn't you forcing you to justify, explain, and engage. Seventh, as much as possible, try to show the person what power they do have in that situation. Okay? If you can help them feel like they're in at least some control, they may not have as much need to kind of engage in the power struggle. Okay? This is especially useful if you've got a behavior plan that demands compliance on a specific issue. Okay? So, like, if you want to go out to the movies, you've got to clean your room. Whatever, I'm making it up. All right? The control for this, the way you want to set it up is you want to put the control in the hands of the individual. Okay? You're not going to demand compliance. You're not going to say you have to clean your room. You're not going to do that. What you're doing instead is you're reminding them how to get the reward. Okay? So they come to you, hey man, I want to go to the movies. And you go, okay, that's cool. Let's go clean your room right now so we can do it. You go, no, I don't want to clean my room. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to clean your room. But I want to go to the movies. Okay, great. Let's go clean your room. Or it can be where you go, hey man, you know, listen, there's a new movie playing right now. Don't know if you're into it or not, but if you get your room cleaned up, we could go look to it. Okay? And then instead of making the issue about cleaning the room, you're talking about, like, the movie. You're reminding them of a potential reward rather than making them do a chore. Okay? And reminding somebody of something can be really helpful. And if they say they don't want to, then you go, okay, that's fine. And they go, well, but I really want to go to the movie. You're like, that's cool. Let's go clean your room. And you go, well, but I don't want to clean your room. You're like, okay, we'll stay here. But I want to go to the movies. Okay, let's go clean your room. You're agreeing with them whatever they do. It's hard to argue with. It's hard to engage in a power struggle if the person keeps agreeing with you. Okay? And that's one of the things that's really useful. If you've got a point of specific contention in a behavior plan or something else, in order to do this, you have to do that. The way you present that choice sort of sets aside their ability to engage in the power struggle because you're not engaging in it. You're just sort of laying it out and supportive of whatever they choose. And the belief that they have the power to choose often de-escalates their need to engage in the actual power struggle. It goes back to being about the issue itself. Do I want to go to the movies badly enough that I'll get up off the couch and go clean my room? Which is really the point that we're trying to discuss anyway. Okay? Eighth, if the answer you're giving is a flat no, if that's just what you have to do, the thing you're probably going to want to do the best is minimize discussion. Okay? If it's not a point that can be discussed or negotiated, I want a dog, no, you can't have a dog, then really what you want to do is you want to make that short and sweet and get out. Okay? Going over it again and again and again is really not going to help you very much. It's just going to escalate, make things worse. It's going to expand. It's going to go wrong. If you're stuck and you're forced to give a flat no, give a flat no. The person deserves to hear the no. They deserve an answer to their question. They deserve an explanation if one exists. But then as soon as that's done, move on, change the topic, go do something else. Okay? Because there's really no point in just going round and round and round over a thing that just can't be negotiated. Ninth, if what you've got is an issue that seems centered in defiance. Remember we talked about the secondary gain, the feeling that there's some other reason for doing this. They're not arguing over the French fry on the floor or whatever it is. They're arguing to argue. They're arguing to prove they're in charge. They're arguing to prove that the soft cat turned them, like whatever. You're going to want to address the problem by changing tactics. Okay? If you've got a person who's defiant, you don't want to list options. Okay? Do you want to go swimming? No. Do you want to go to the park? No. Do you want to go to Walmart? No. Okay. Why don't you ever take me out? You never take me out anywhere. You never take me anywhere. Why don't you take me anywhere? And now it's turning into an argument. Hey man, I'm trying to take you someplace. You didn't tell me where you wanted to go. Well, you didn't tell me any place good. It's a fight over a fight. Okay? In situations like that, you don't want to make it easy for them to frustrate you. So in a situation like that, for example, one thing you could do is you could slide a sheet across the table and you go, listen, man, these are the 18 places we visited last month. Okay? You can go anywhere on that list. Pick any one of them. We'll go anywhere you want to go. It's up to you. We'll decide. And maybe he goes, man, I don't want to go to any of those places. You go, okay, that's fine. We don't have to go anywhere. Do you want to stay home? You want to go to a new place? Make it so that the person has to come up with the choice. The nature of defiance is that they're rejecting whatever you say. They're rejecting whatever you suggest. Defiance is defined by the no. The thing that's a lot harder for people who are defiant is what do they want to do instead? I'm not going to be like my mom and dad. Well, what are you going to be like? Well, not like that. Okay, but like what? So, with a person who's going to be defiant, you don't want to present things in a way that they're easy to reject. You want to present them in terms where the burden of coming up with the answer is on the individual. Okay? And if they then ask for things that they know they can't have, you use some of the other tactics that we have talked about here about, well, what has your circle said in the past about you going to the crack house? They said I can't go, it's dangerous. Like, okay, well, that one's not on the list then. But I really want to go. Well, you've answered your own question. You know what the circle said. So let's look at some other things. Okay? But again, you're not engaging in the power struggle there, and you've made it hard for them to be overtly defiant because you haven't made it easy for them to just reject. Okay? 10th, and this is a really nice way to sum up through all of this. Remember that you really do have more power than they have. Okay? You are allowed to tell them no. And they really can't tell you what you need to do. They don't get to boss you around. They can try, but we all know they don't really have that power. You can, and you do. You make them take their meds, you make them eat their food, you make them dress a certain way, you hold them to a schedule, you get them out of the house, you have them fulfill their CB day hours, you make them go to their medical appointments. I don't like going to the dentist. You don't like going to the dentist. If you decide you don't want to go to the dentist for 10 years, you don't go to the dentist for 10 years. There's no way they let one of these guys not go to the dentist for 10 years. You guys both know that. They'll find a way. They'll pressure them. They'll make it happen. So as we're doing this, you've got to remember, you really do have more pressure than they do. You've got more power. You've got more control. You've got more authority. You can make them do stuff. There's a fundamental gap there. And so if they feel bossed around, they've got a point. Okay? Keep that in mind, and it can sometimes help you to sort of extract yourself from the he's got to learn who's boss kind of thinking. Okay? Because the more you get into the he's got to learn who's boss thinking, the more of these power struggles you're going to get caught up into. So, to conclude, we've got 10 good suggestions that will work with different people in different situations around the idea of how to sort of avoid the power struggle, how to step aside, how to find yourself a way past it without sort of getting into it too much. All right, in this third part, what we're going to be talking about is if you're in a power struggle, how do you get out? Okay? We had 10 really good ways to sort of avoid them, to sidestep them, to make them not happen before. And those, I hope, will work in the majority of circumstances. But the fact is, there are times when you're going to get in them. All right? You won't want to, but even the best staff, even the most well-meaning person, you get hooked. Sometimes you get hooked. And so once you're in, how do you get out? Let's talk about that now. Okay? The best way to cope with a power struggle is, as we've said before, avoid getting it into the first place. Everybody slips sometimes, and it can be really hard to stop yourself once you've gotten into that power struggle. Okay? If you find yourself in a power struggle, stop it immediately. And I mean that in a very specific and literal sense. Stop talking. The instant you suspect you are in a power struggle, even if you're halfway through a sentence, stop talking. Okay? There'll be tremendous pressure at that moment to kind of talk your way out of it, talk yourself around it, go, maybe this isn't really a power struggle, whatever. Just close your mouth. Okay? If you suspect you're in one, the very first thing is you got to disengage. You got to pull back. You got to get out. Okay? If you've got another staff member there and you can hand it off, that's perfect. That's optimal. A lot of times we've got one staff working in a house, you can't do that. Physically separate. Go walk, be in a different room, be in a different place. Go, oh man, I totally forgot, I didn't do the dishwasher. Take it up. Oh, dude, I totally forgot, I got 15 caramels I got to go eat. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Get yourself out of that. All right? If you can't physically remove yourself because you're stuck on an elevator or something like that, change the topic. Get on to a completely different thing. You know, man, I haven't had macaroni and cheese in weeks. What are you talking about, man? I don't know, I just thought of that. Dude, I totally forgot that. Those are awesome pants. Look, a bird. Like, it doesn't matter. The thing is, when you're in a power struggle, the first step, the most important step, the thing you have to do, the thing that is required before anything else will work, is you got to stop. You got to get out. You got to pull away. Okay? And most of the times when a power struggle is going on, your emotions are up. You're heated. You want to do the whole and another thing. All right? And so getting away is crucially important. Once you're in a power struggle, the only way out is to disengage. You usually can't resolve it from the inside. Get separate. Okay? Be another place. And if you can just let the argument drop, do it. Lots of times, if you're fighting over nothing, you could just never bring it up again. Okay? Pull back, get yourself calm, and be thinking like, do I even have to re-engage on this issue? Let more time pass than you think you need to. You guys have all had arguments with people you love, and you guys all know that when you walk away from each other, the first 10 thoughts in your head are, she needs to understand, blah, 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 blah. And he just doesn't understand it the way it is. And I told him, and he didn't want to hear it, and it's all, that's what's in our heads, right? And then you wait 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 minutes, and then the thoughts change. Like, maybe I was a little sharp, right? That's what you're waiting for. What you're waiting for is when your thoughts change from continuing to justify your argument to maybe I didn't handle this thing exactly the way I should have. Okay? And until your thoughts make that shift, you shouldn't try and re-engage. Until your thoughts have made that swap over where you're getting a little distance on it and you're starting to see, well, yeah, he did some stuff wrong, but you know what, I did some stuff wrong here too. Like once that happens, then you're starting to be ready to re-engage. And here's the thing. Just because you're ready to re-engage doesn't mean the person will be. Okay? They typically have emotional regulation and coping skills that aren't as well as developed as ours. Okay? And so when that happens, this guy may need another 20 minutes. You may be totally ready to get back into it and settle it out and go, man, I was a little sharp with you. But he may not be ready for that. He may be still like on another thing. All right? So pick your time, pick your spots on re-engagement. And remember what we said. You may not need to re-engage on this issue at all. You'll need to re-engage around like, hey man, you know, like what? Let's talk lunch. Let's leave that behind. You may need to re-engage and just go on with your day. But for sure, if you're going to re-engage and come back and talk about the issue, you've got to be all the way down and seeing it better. And that other guy has had to have some time to sort of get himself down and re-engaged as well. Okay? If you feel like you still have to resolve it, that you just can't ignore it, you just can't leave it behind, spend some time saying to yourself, all right, what do I need? What is the crucial issue? What is the debatable point that I really need compliance around? Okay? Him understanding staff rules or the role of staff or, you know, who's in charge around him, like, leave that behind. But if it's like, man, he's a fragile diabetic and I gotta know his sugar. I gotta know it. He's been sneaking food. We haven't exercised. I don't know what his sugar is. He seems a little loopy to me. Not going to say that to him out loud, but man, I got to know what that number is. I'm worried about that. Like if you've got a specific thing, focus on that. And then when you re-engage, you've got a really clear priority about what you're kind of going for. All right? And when you're picking this thing, when you're picking this priority, please remember what's in the ISP, what's in the BSP. What are they saying about the crucial things that you can't negotiate on? And what you'll find is that the ISP, the BSP, stuff like that, they usually don't have very many absolutes. They've usually got an awful lot of times when they're like, encourage, suggest, but not like, he's got to pick up his socks before he goes. Okay? So if you're absolutely committed to, I got to re-engage and continue to discuss this issue, make sure that it's an issue that is absolutely heartbreakingly necessary to continue with. Because if you can just leave it behind, that's absolutely the best thing to do. Okay? Talking this over with somebody else is a good idea. Like I told you, you got to pull back. Hey, consult with the BA. Right? If there's a BA on the case, do it. If not, talk to your PC, your house manager. You can call the ISC if you need to. All right? Especially if it's an ISP-based thing and you really need a specific answer. This does two things for you. The first thing is it really stretches out how long you're disengaged. It gives you a lot more time to get calm. Okay? The second thing it does, though, is that sort of bouncing the idea around with this person really does help you to see, is this as necessary as I've been presenting it? Okay? And if it is, and there's going to be a fight, or potentially could, hey man, now you've got coverage, right? I checked in with the BA. The BA said absolutely not, cannot go to the movies until he cleans his room. That's the way it's got to be. And so I reminded of that, and the guy escalated, like, you've got some coverage there, right? You checked in with the BA, you did what the BA said, like, it's kind of on the BA's head. And I'm not here to throw the BA under the bus. Like, I work with them, I really like what they do. But many times, that check-in will let you know, is this an absolute, non-negotiable, we got to do it, or now we got a little fudge on this. We got a little wiggle room. And a little wiggle room will make your life a whole lot easier. If you re-engage, if you have to re-engage, you have to keep restarting, re-engage on simple terms. Okay? Give them time to talk about what they want. Give them time to sort of share their concerns. Okay? When you re-engage, your pressing desire is going to be to explain to them why it's important. Okay? But that's what was happening before with the whole power struggle argument thing, is you were trying really hard to get your side across. Okay? If you got to re-engage, start your re-engagement by giving that person a chance to sort of tell you what they wanted to say. And that's really important because until they think you know what they were saying, they won't listen to you. They'll put all their energy in trying to say louder and louder and louder, this is what I want, this is what's important, this is what I think, you don't understand. So if you could nod your head and go, I get it, you really wanted to go to the movie, you really thought that was important, that the room didn't feel important, the room is still going to be here. Yeah. That it's just sitting there, it's not hurting anybody, and there's no reason why you couldn't go to the movie. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Once you've shown them that you've heard their position, you don't have to agree with it, you just have to show them that you heard it, they won't have so much internal pressure to tell you, to explain. They'll know. They'll know that you get their position. You may not agree with it, but they'll know that you heard them. At that point, it's a lot easier for them to hear what you want to say back. There's not so much stuff in their head they're trying to tell you. They've got more space for you. So when you re-engage, even though you've got a point, a position, an idea that you really need to convey, it's almost always best to start that with a sort of a listening experience where they're able to sort of convey to you exactly what is important to them, and you're sort of able to say it back to them so they know for sure you've gotten it. And then there's a lot less pressure on them to re-engage in the argument because they know you got their position if you don't necessarily agree with it. Okay? Agree with them that it's frustrating. Okay? Agree with them. If you think it's unfair, you can agree with that. That's a little more dangerous. But I would say more on the lines of like, hey man, I get it. You really want to go to the movies and this is driving you nuts. I would be frustrated too. I totally get that. That's reasonable to me. Allow them to vent. Validate their feelings. Man, you shouldn't feel that way. It's so easy for you to clean up your room. If you just cleaned up your room, you wouldn't be like, and now you're off to the races back in the power struggle. Give them their chance. I get it. You're frustrated. You don't feel like doing it. You do feel like going to the movies. The room's going to be there after you come home. Like, I get it. I get it. It makes sense to me that you're frustrated. Unfortunately, you and I are both having to follow the rules that are laid out in the BSP. We have to follow the behavior plan. Your frustrations make sense to me, but we got to follow this other thing. I wish there's wiggle room. I checked with the BA. You heard me check with the BA. This is the deal. They say you don't have to clean up your room if you don't want to, but if you want to go to the movies, that's what's got to happen. Do you have another option? Do you have another idea? Because as far as I know, like that's what we're sort of stuck with. If the power struggle looks like it's going to start up again, if the power struggle looks like it's going to get worse, end the conversation by asking them to come talk if they think of something else. Go, listen, man, we're going round and round and round in circles. All right, we've said all this stuff. I hear you. You've said it all. I heard it. Repeat it back to them to show you. Go, listen, time out. If you think of a different thing, come back to me. We'll talk about it. If it's just the same stuff, we've covered that. But if you come up with a different thing, let me know. I really want to hear it because I'm feeling really stuck too. I'm feeling stuck. It doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere with this. Let's just let that go for now. Okay? As always, whenever a power struggle goes on, you really do want to make sure that whoever's coming on board next, the next shift, the next day, whatever, they know what's been happening. Okay? You wouldn't like it if you had to sort of walk into the shredder and nobody warned you of what was happening. Pull your staff aside, go, hey man, he's really on this hot button issue about changing apartments. He's been talking about it all day. This is what I said to him. This is what I only said this. I didn't promise him he could go. I didn't promise him we'd go to the management office. I said that I'll all wait till we talk to the supervisor on Monday. Give the next person coming on board a fair shake. Because just because you avoided a power struggle, make it easy for the next guy to do that too. In conclusion, as we talk about extracting yourself from a power struggle, the most important thing is to notice that you're in it. You have to know you're in it. And once you're there, you got to disengage. If you've disengaged from the power struggle, all the other options become available, all the other ideas that we've discussed. But recognizing that you're in it and pulling out, not trying to fix it internally, but actually disengaging and giving yourself time to settle down and chill out, and the other person to sort of get themselves under control, that is the absolutely vital, necessary first step. Once you're able to do that, a whole bunch of other options become available. Okay, a whole bunch of other ideas. Making sure you pick your priorities, reconfirming this is something we really still need to work on, all that kind of stuff. All right. Yeah.
What do you do in those situations where everything that you try to implement in a home becomes a struggle?
Right.
Everything that you, whether it's in line with the ISP, the BSP, daily living functions or whatever, it's always a struggle.
Right.
How do you avoid that confrontation?
All right. So typically, when I see that, we're talking about power struggles in a very fundamental sense, because if it's universal like that, like one of the hallmarks of power struggles, and we talked about this before, is that if the argument isn't really about the argument, it's about something else. If we're having a knockdown, drag-out fight over the fact that there's a yellow crayon on the floor and there shouldn't be a yellow crayon on the floor, like if that's what we're like if it's either really small or completely comprehensive, it has to be a power struggle. It's not about an issue; it's about some other thing. Okay, typically control. All right. So what I would say is that if everything in the home is about control, then everything in the home is about power right now. Okay, and so what you're going to want to do is sort of fall back on some of those strategies that we talked about before as far as like what diffuses a power struggle. But the most important thing is whoever's in this situation has got to go, this is a power struggle. Because until you do that, if it's all about the 75 arguments you're having, until somebody goes, it's a power struggle. That's what this is. It's all it is. It's a power struggle. It's one long power struggle. Like until somebody steps back and does that, then there's nothing we can do to fix it. So it's a little hard for me to give you a specific answer on that particular thing, other than to say that what I typically see get missed is that everybody gets very focused on the endless list of 75 struggles, and they lose track of stepping back and going, it's a power struggle going on in the house right now. And that simple fact alone reorients everybody's thinking and can help you usually find a way out of the forest. All right, give it to me.
Okay. I have a level 6 home that has a recipient that is constantly after the staff.
Right.
Anything that she doesn't want, she feels that she can get rid of the staff by lying, making false allegations to get them dismissed from her home so she can have a fresh new set of staff.
Okay.
So what happens? What do you do?
Okay, all right. So in this set of circumstances, what we're going to talk about is a concept called secondary gain. Okay? Secondary gain is what's the real reason they're doing it. Okay? There's the reason on top that they're saying they're a bad staff, they're an evil staff, they're a whatever. But in fact, there's some reason underneath that. Okay? And until we sort of understand the reason underneath, what psychologists call the secondary gain, all the stuff we try to do for solving what's on the surface won't do anything. It just spins. So what does she really want? What is she really trying to do? I mean, like, yes, she's trying to get rid of the staff, but why? Why is she trying to get rid of the staff?
She wants to go home.
She wants to go home. All right. So in those circumstances, what I would probably be doing is having somebody, can be a house manager, can be a PC, can be a therapist, can be a BA, whatever. I would have somebody who's not the direct care staff in the house a lot come to her and sort of go, this is your sort of, come to the power talk where we go, listen, I know you want to go home. You're not going home. I'm really sorry. You're not going home. You're not. And you want to have it be someone who's outside the home, because you don't want her to fixate on the people in the home as the ones who are giving her the bad news. You want to have her angry, upset, and dissatisfied at someone outside the home. And that way the direct staff are less likely to be targeted. Okay? Not saying it's going to solve it, but it will take some of the pressure off. Okay? So you want to have, as much as you can, the secondary gain reason be the thing that's being addressed all the time in these circumstances. And you want to have the person that she's mad at and fixated on be someone who is not physically on the shift in the space all the time. Because you want the people in the home to be able to blame somebody out there. One of the things that I do as a psychologist that makes me tremendously useful to the staff is that I am an evil rat with a dark heart. And they can blame me for everything. Dr. Greddy said you can't do this. Dr. Greddy said you can't do that. Doctor, I'm sorry, I really wish that we could go and buy you a chainsaw, but Dr. Greddy said you're just not allowed to have a chainsaw. It doesn't make any sense to me either, but really you should just go and get the chainsaw. But he said we can, and I'll get fired if I do it, and so it's really his fault. Like, having somebody outside the house to blame can pull some pressure off the staff that are right there on the shift. Yeah, in the back.
Okay, Dr. Gavetta. My guy asks questions, the same question over and over again. And it's kind of hard to answer that same question over and over again. And this for every shift. I don't know whether they're trying to manipulate the staff or what, but if they asking the same question over and over and over again, what do I do in that situation?
Okay, really good question. Part of what's tough is that repetitive question asking can happen for a couple of different reasons, okay? One reason is sort of a manipulative reason where they're asking the question to different people trying to get a different answer. This one said, can I go to the store? No. Can I go to the store? No. Can I go to the store? Yes. Okay, we're going to go. Like they're looking for a different answer, right? That happens sometimes. If it is happening as frequently as you were saying, my guess is it may be that. It may be something else too. It may be simple obsessive-compulsive disorder, where they've got a fixation in their head. Autism also shows a lot of this, where they just get a concept in there and it sort of gets stuck. Okay? In a case like this, what I would typically do is, first I would start by asking a question. Okay? I've answered that. Do you remember what I said? Okay. My guess is you'll get sort of blank back. Nothing there. And I'd hold that for a minute. We talked about this. We talked about it just a minute ago. Do you remember what I said? We talked about it a little while ago. 2 or 3 times. Not a huge number, but enough to let the person know I'm not giving up. Like, I did talk about this. We did speak about it. My guess is they genuinely don't remember. It's out of their heads. Okay? And so after you've done it once or twice or 3 times, whatever you think is right, you go, okay, well, what I said was blah, 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 blah. Can you say that back to me? And they go, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And then what happens is that'll probably diffuse it for that first time. But for the rest of the shift, they'll come back with these questions. And then you'll go, well, what did I say about that? What was the thing that I told you? And they'll go, well, you said blah, 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 blah. And you go, that's right. You remembered it so well. I'm really proud of you for remembering that. So let's talk about your meals for tonight. And then you're going to move on to another topic. Because you typically have, once they've given you their answer, they've sort of lost permission to continue asking. Okay? For people that have obsessive thoughts, and this is true for both people with obsessive compulsive disorder and autism, once the thought gets going in their head fast enough, once they start ruminating on it enough, once they start pushing it enough, they can't get it out. You can't satisfy them. They'll ask and you'll answer, and they'll ask and you'll answer, and they'll ask, and it's easy for them to just keep asking and asking and asking. Forcing them to stop and think by giving them a question that they must respond to. Forcing them to sort of put the brake on that kind of, we call it rumination, but it's basically just like endless cycling kind of thing. Forcing them to stop and think pushes that kind of out of their head a little bit, has them thinking in a different direction. If you don't give them another topic, it'll push right back. But if you give them another topic to discuss, that can push it all the way out of their mind. And this is the real advantage that we've got, is that you and I can think about 2, 3, 4 things at once sometimes. Well, you can. I'm really good at thinking about one thing at a time and doing nothing more. But most people can like multitask. Most of our guys can't multitask. So if you can fill their head with enough of something else, it'll push that obsessive thought out and you get some peace. Right? It'll come back. But instead of doing it 60 times a shift, you'll be doing it 12 times a shift. Okay?
Dr. Gavetta, I have a question. What should our response be if we work with a person whose behavior support plan requires that they do essential tasks like bathing before going out into the community? they're refusing to do the essential tasks, but they still want to go out for the community activities.
No, I get it. And this is really good. Now, like you phrased it, like the way that you phrased it in terms of like it's part of the behavior plan, okay? Because typically these battles, we only want to fight them when we've got a really good reason why we have to fight them, okay? Really what we're talking about here is sort of exerting control. You got to do this, okay? And what happens with all these guys is that as soon as you tell them you got to do this, even if you tell them you got to eat ice cream, they're just going to be like, what do you mean you're telling me I got to eat? You know, like it elicits all this defiance, right? So when we talk about exerting control, usually we want to exert control only in very specific situations, like for a behavior plan. And then the thing we want to control is not the reward. The thing we want to control is the choice. So for example, he's got to take a bath before he goes out. And you come to the guy and you go say, hey, listen, I know you want to go out today, so let's go ahead and get started on your bath. He goes, no, I don't want to take a bath today. And you go, fine, totally cool, no sweat. I'll get the crayons out, I'll get the art stuff out, let's see what's on TV, we'll stay in for the day, totally great. But I don't want to stay here today, I want to go out. Awesome, totally cool, you want to go out? Fine, let's get your bath, I'll start running your bath right now, I'll get the water going. No, but I don't really feel like taking a bath. No sweat, we'll get the art stuff out, no problem, we'll stay here. You're never saying no to the guy. You're agreeing with everything he says. Whatever he decides, you're going along with it, right? But you're not letting him go out, and you're not arguing about why you're not going out. It's all you agree, like bend like a leaf in the wind, grasshopper, you know, like every time he tries to come up with an argument, you're agreeing with him. You can't fight that. You can't be defiant with it. So it becomes really difficult for him to escalate. And eventually it settles down to him deciding, do I really want to go out? And if I do, am I going to take the bath? And that's really all we want anyway.
Dr. G, when I try to do this, my guy wants to argue all the time. Am I making things worse? For instance, if I'm asking him to clean up his room, which is one of his chores he's to do, and he gets upset every time, and he knows he has to clean up his room, so what do I do in that situation?
Okay, all right. So when I see things turn into power struggles, it's almost always because we're demanding immediate compliance. Okay? Immediate compliance tends to be the thing that escalates the situation the fastest. He's got stuff he's got to do. He absolutely does. And you're sort of in a position of being forced to sort of follow the rules. Like if this is in the plan, if this is in the ISP, I kind of have to do this. All right? Where it always takes its bad turn is in the time when we're like, you got to do it, and you got to do it now, and you got to do it because I say so, and you got to like, and once it takes on that tone. Now I'm not saying you're like that. That's not where I'm at. But what I'm saying is that as far as this guy who wants to argue, it takes two to tango. All right. So you come to the guy and you're like, hey, you know, we gotta clean up your room before we can go, and he's like, I'm not cleaning up your room. You can't make me. And you go, no, it's totally cool, man. Just reminding you. It's fine. I'll go hang out over here. You come back 10 minutes later. You go, hey, man, just reminding you about the room. Shut up. You can't make me do my room. You're like, no, absolutely. I'm not asking. I'm not even asking you to do it. I noticed that it was 10 o'clock already, and you had stuff you wanted to get out and do today. I didn't want the day to slip by. If you want to stay here, that's fine with me. No sweat. We'll stay as long as you want. But I just wanted to remind you about that. Yeah, man, no, whatever. Fine. And then he comes stomping out an hour later, and he goes, I'm bored. I don't want to be here anymore. And you're like, oh, okay, totally cool, man. Let's go clean up your room so we can get out of here. I don't want to clean up my room. Oh, no sweat, man. I'll clean it up later. Cool, you'll clean it up later. No sweat. Fine, you set the time. It's good with me. I want to go, though. Okay, let's clean it up right now. That way we can go right now. Man, I don't want to clean up right now. Sure, no problem. We'll stay as long as you want. Take all the time you need. You're answering and agreeing with everything that comes out of his mouth. Every argument he tries to get into. Because really, that's what he wants, is to make it an argument. So what I would say is you set aside. Yeah, you got to.
So does that apply to him wanting to smoke? He wants to smoke. He knows he has to clean his room up.
Right.
He don't want to clean his room up, but want to go outside and smoke. Does that apply to that as well?
You know, the first thing I'd do is make sure you kick this back to whatever sort of behavior plan or other plan you've got in place, all right? Because I would be reluctant here to tell you something and find out that the plan said something different. What I would do is first go to the BA or whoever it is that's in charge and go, listen, in this situation, how do you want me to handle it? In general, what I would say to the guy is, it's really hard to argue if you're sort of human, okay? And so when I get stuck in a position that is sort of self-contradictory, one of the things I really like to do is to sort of share the dilemma. Okay? So I'll go to the guy and I go, listen, man, you want to smoke. I get that you want to smoke, and I want you to smoke. I got a plan here that says you got to clean your room before you smoke. And so I really feel stuck. I want you to be able to smoke, but like, I've got a plan that I have to kind of hold to, and I'm really feeling stuck. How do we make this happen? Because I'm caught in between. I really do want to make you happy. I'll go and help you clean your room. Like, we'll get this done. It could take 5 minutes. That'll work. You're like, man, I ain't going to clean my room. I'm just going to smoke. And you're like, well, man, I'm really stuck. I just don't know what to do. I can't. The plan says I can't let you smoke. They'll write me up. They'll fire me if I do this thing. And then you're going to get somebody in here who's going to be even harder about this than me. Like, that's not going to solve your problem. Like, the only path I see right now to the smoking is the getting the room clean. Do you have another option? If you got another idea, I'm willing to listen to it. But sometimes if you sort of turn over the dilemma to the person, not make it that you have to figure out the answer all the time, at the very least, it bypasses a lot of the anger and emotion and control issues. Because you're essentially giving them control. Listen, man, these are the options that I see. If you've got another one, I'm willing to hear it. I'm willing to do it. But these are kind of the choices. And you can pick whatever you want, and I'll help you out with it. But like, that's what I see. And it gets really hard to argue at that level because you're not refusing, denying, controlling, any of that. You've kind of given it all to the guy. And now he's got to come up with a solution. Yes?
Okay, so I work with this girl whose communication skills are, really up to par.
Right.
And so when she asks for things, we can tell her no. We think we're saying no without saying no. And all she says is, okay, do you understand? Yeah, yeah. Next thing you know, she's busting a hole in the wall or throwing the TV or something like that after we thought that she understood.
Right. No, it's a really good question. Okay, got a couple of things to think about here. The first thing I would do is I would look at the kind of communication abilities that person has, okay? One of the things that's really common is to have someone whose expressive language, their ability to say something, is much less well developed than their receptive language, their ability to understand what's being said. Okay? So one of the first things I'd be looking at is the disconnect that they just can't ask me for what they really want, or they're just not saying it right? Like, is that internal frustration that they're asking for the wrong thing and I'm responding to the words that are coming out of their head, but I'm not really meeting their need? Okay? So that's one thing I would check first. Okay? If you're pretty confident that they've asked the right question and that you know what they want, okay, the next thing that I see happens really commonly for people with communication skills that they're sort of struggling with is that we're giving them too much. Okay? That we feel a desperate need to sort of explain it to them, but that if you've got a person who's got really remedial communication skills, if you give them the phone book, like, it's just peanuts, wah, 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 after a while. They just tune it out. They lose it, okay? Because it's really hard work for someone who's got diminished communication skills to sort of pay attention and focus. And it's very easy that it just turns into blah, 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 blah. So I typically use, with people who have sort of compromised communication skills, the thing I advocate for is what I call the 6-word rule. If you can't say it in 6 words or less, don't say it. Okay? So when you're doing your interventions with this particular person, if it's a message you really think they need to know, find a way to make it 6 words or less. Okay? You need to take a bath. Period. We'll go to the store after your bath. Real short, real small. Break them up really tiny. Okay? The last thing I would say, the third suggestion I would give in this particular case, is that everybody's got pride. Everybody's got a sense of self. And a lot of the people we work with just don't want to sort of admit that they are dissimilar in ability to the people that are around them. Okay? I don't want to admit that I'm not an underwear model. I mean, like, everybody has stuff that they don't want to sort of come on board with. Like, that's the way it goes. These guys all have pride, and they don't want to look bad, and they all have heard in their childhood about how they weren't very smart, and usually some words a lot worse than you're not very smart, got heard in their hearing. And so they all, as a regular pattern, do a lot of like, oh yeah, I get it, because they don't want to admit that they just don't get it. Okay? And so with that particular subset of people, especially somebody with compromised communication skills, rather than asking them, do you understand? which is a response I don't have much faith in. Either she just doesn't understand, or she may think she understands and she really doesn't. What I typically say is, after I've given my response, okay, say that back to me. Say it back to me. Use your own words. And see what you get back. And if what you get back is your own words, then you can be sure that she understood it. I'll bet you, I'll put $1 on the table now that says the first time you do this, she's like, what? And none of it stuck. None of it's there. And that you're getting the escalation because in her mind, she never got an answer. Okay? In conclusion, as a part of the whole training, what we're going to say about power struggles is that they're a natural thing that happens just about all the time. They tend to be inspired by our individuals' perceptions of feeling helpless or having their pride violated in some way. There are other reasons, secondary gain reasons, that can make things really tough. As far as you guys, the most important thing with power struggles is identifying what most often inspires them in your guy, finding a way to avoid those most common sort of tripwires and triggers, and that when you do get yourself into a power struggle, noticing it right away, disengaging, deciding if you even need to come in and re-engage, and if you do, being very focused on how you have that discussion continue. Make sense? Thank you guys all very much for your time and attention. I appreciate you participating in the training today.